remember, like Bob Clark and Doug Campbell.
Rob Clark and Joe Bordelli.
Oh, you gotta give him that hunk too and spit on that thing.
In the heart of Dallas, where legends unfold, a tale of shadows, mysteries untold, but truth is obscured in the depths of the night. The Lone Gunman Podcast sheds a flickering light.
Section 107 of the Fair Use Act of 1976 provides protection to use copyrighted material for research, analysis, education, and commentary purposes. We here at Loose Moose Productions reserve that right. Now, on with the show. Here's Joe B and the Triple B. Hey, Aunt Udine, how's things in Texas?
Everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
Hands on Triple B and Joe B. Joe B and the Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joe B. Rock on, get Joe Morelli. Triple B and Joe B. Joe B and Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joe B. Rock on, get Joe Morelli. Here we go.
And here we go.
What is up, people? This is episode number 304 of the Lone Gunman Podcast. The Paines Revisited is what we're going to be talking about today. And here with me, as always, is my humble and handsome co-host, Mr. Joey Scars Borelli. What's up, Joe?
Hey, what's up, Rob? How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm always psyched up to be here on a Friday evening with you and all of our lovely listeners who we shall welcome into the fray.
Same here, sir.
Let's see. We got Paula in the house, Tiny Dancer. Of course, Trey. Trey is in the house. South to West. Claude and Aunt Udine, of course. Moose Heaven, Moose 7, Paula Diana.
Hello.
Hello. Alpha 66, Big Mike, Garden and Guns. And thank you, Jack, off the bat before we even started.
Thank you.
We mightily appreciate it. We do. Hell comes to play. What's up, Lee?
Hey, how are you, sir?
Let's see here. Sally is in the house. What's up, Sally? Always a pleasure. Paul is in the house. James is in the house. Scott. Hello, Scott. Now, let's see. That's about it. All I can see in here so far. So anyway,
Hello.
Folks, welcome in. Bungled, what's up? I see you sliding in just a cooney hair late. That's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. And Red's
in the house. What's up, Red? Awesome. So, Joe, before we get started, I believe we have some announcements to make, don't we?
We do.
Let's make them.
We do. Let's see. As some of you know, the new Lancer updated speaker list has been shared on Facebook, as my thing will not bring up. And there are some new names on there. Can you see this, Rob?
Way to be prepared. I can see it, yes.
All right. Robert and Janet Groden, Mr. Larry Hancock, Doug Campbell, Alex Harris, Bill Simpich, Gary Fannin, Sarah Jordan Heights, Brian Edwards, Mr. Chuck Ocelli, Brent Holland, Gail Nix Jackson, Rob.
Woohoo!
That will be amazing. Mr. Paul Blow, Carmine Savastano, Mike Swanson, David Boylan, Dick Russell, Tricky Dick.
Dirty Dick Russell.
Oh, yeah, that was your name.
Yeah.
Bob Nelson, Will O'Halloran.
Willie.
I don't know
Trip
him.
Willie. He's a young guy.
Nice.
Yeah,
We
early
like-
20s.
We like young researchers. Casey Quinlan, Andy Keel, Joe Borelli. Oh,
That didn't sound good, Joe. But that's okay. We can move on.
yes. In retrospect, it didn't. But Joe Borelli, that's a nice name there.
Joe Borelli, who the hell is that?
Some Scafusa for sure. We'll be repping the TLG down there, and I definitely hope to see a lot of people down there. That I know I'll see Mr. Mike, hopefully Alpha 66, Matt DeWitt, Fred Litwin, Rob, and Jeff Meek.
Well, there is a cat fight waiting to happen between Matt Dowdett and Fred Litwin. If I've ever seen one, my money's on Fred.
Yeah, the when they made the post, a couple people had commented like, "Why is Fred talking?" And I think it was
Fred's a lone nutter.
Yes,
but he's a good one.
Yes, you've had him on your show previously
multiple times.
Yeah.
Fred is a friend.
Yeah,
and even though we don't see eye to eye on everything, he's not a dick,
right.
At least to me.
And if I remember, he has evidence to back up his points, right? He's not just like a real lone nutter. I mean, as much as a lone nutter can have evidence.
Yeah, although he was fantastically wrong on the point of, he almost had me convinced. Well, he did have me convinced that Oswald did not have 544 Camp Street. Knowing the flyers.
I remember that.
But he has since been proven wrong. Mm-hmm. So he does get some things wrong, but yes,
don't we all?
Yeah. And trust me, there's a lot out there on the Garrison case against Clay Shaw that should be exposed and should be out there, that a lot of these Garrison D suckers don't talk about. So,
apparently Gabrielle said in the comment, Zedeker, that he's going to be presenting on a very interesting topic. And that's kind of all she gave. So who knows what kind of topic it would be. I'm open to anyone who has open viewpoints, as long as.
And if you go here on YouTube and search Fred Litwin's podcast out and listen to the opening song, you'll hear your boy. Fun fact, Friday.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was in it, but apparently I'm in the intro.
You're a popular guy. I respect that.
I am popular. Popular.
So, yeah. And I'm not going to tease and not tell you who I might be presenting with. I'll say it's a fellow friend of the show. One might say it's a Gumar in terms of me and Rob's relationship. And that's all I'm going to give.
Wow. Joe and Tiny Dancer will be presenting at Lancer. She just doesn't know it yet.
Yeah, you never know.
Anyway, skating right over that topic. Okay. I see we got some new friends in the house. Perpetual Concepts, Steve O. What is up? What up? Chris.
Hello.
From across the pond is in the house. I'm tweaking him.
Yeah, and I think Perpetual Concepts, I think that's our golfer friend. Wasn't he playing golf once and he couldn't listen? So Perpetual Concepts, I was offered a tee time today at 4 p.m. at a country club here in Connecticut, really nice course, and I declined. It hurt. I knew I would be rushing back, maybe 9 holes, but beautiful day. But the things we do for love, right, Rob?
That's right. I see Peter in the house. Peter. All right. So the reason for this episode, folks, is let's get right into this here. Let me pull up. Old lovely lady here. Sylvia Hyde Hoke. Now, she passed away back in May, but I don't think it was really put out there yet. And they are just now having a memorial service for her. Sylvia Hyde Hoke died Thursday, May 23rd in Littleton, Colorado. Okay, file that away for later. At the age of 94 after a brief illness. Born in New York, New York, on October 2nd, 1929, Sylvia arrived just weeks before the great crash that precipitated the Great Depression. She and her family shared a farmhouse in Freehold, New Jersey, Joe,
It's not far.
with two other families in one house. It's like 3 girls, 1 cup, for a period during the Depression before they moved to Columbus, Ohio, where she graduated high school as a top student and winner of a scholarship to attend any state university that she wanted. So instead, she elected to attend Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, where she majored in psychology. She then married John Hoke Jr. the day after their graduation from Antioch in 1950 and immediately moved to Washington, D.C., where she worked as a statistician for the Department of Labor. Okay. And various other, I think I missed that line, but it said various other governmental agencies. Use your imagination. The Goring family spent several years in Suriname, where John's fascination with wild animals, including boas, sloths, macaws, and more, flourished, and Sylvia's toleration for hosting such creatures in the home grew. After the families returned to the D.C. area, turtles, snakes, and tropical fish were the family's constant companions. I believe they also had an orangutan, Joe. No, wow. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Sounds fitting. Familiar to the many visitors of the home in Bethesda, Maryland. Always politically active, Sylvia was associated with the Women's National Democratic Club and the National Organization for Women, NOW. She was a lifelong reader who was especially fond of mysteries. Sylvia was predeceased by her husband, John, and her son, Edward. She is survived by her brother, Carl Hyde, and sister, Ruth Hyde Paine, both also Antioch College alumni, by the way. Her son, Franklin Hoke, daughter-in-law, Agatha Andrews, granddaughter, Magdalene Andrews Hoke, and grandson, Levi Andrews Hoke. Her daughter, and grandson, Cyril Sedrov. Her son, Edward's widow, daughter-in-law, Val Aschenbach, and her son, Lawrence Hoke. Granddaughter, Nicolette Tuck, Nicolette's husband, Trevor Tuck, and grandson, Jesse Hoke. A memorial celebration of life will be held August 17th, 2024 at 11 a.m. at River Road Unitarian Church, 6301 River Road, Bethesda, Maryland. In lieu of flowers, please send donations to the Democratic National Committee or Planned Parenthood.
Interesting.
Yeah. So a diehard Dem, and I guess a protagonist for abortions, apparently. Now, what's interesting, so she was living in Colorado. I'm assuming at that age, she was living with one of her sons or daughters in Colorado.
Right.
But for the majority of their life, they lived in Bethesda, Maryland. And of course, we all know she worked at the CIA, among other government agencies. Doing what? I don't know. But that led me to think something, Joe. Okay, so here's the church. This is the River Road Unitarian Church. Now, the reason I bring this up, that's a weird looking church, don't you think?
Yeah.
Pretty weird. That's a church, folks. Now, what's interesting about this is, of course, it caught my eye. River Road is kind of near where I live. if you go down, you hop on the Beltway from Virginia, and you're heading towards Maryland, it is the first exit off the Beltway, River Road. And it is in an area of Bethesda / Potomac, Maryland, where a lot of very, 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 very rich people live. And I'm talking like, Dan Snyder, owner of the Washington, or former owner of the Washington Redskins / Commanders, among many other notable names.
And Rob,
yes,
I have experience in Bethesda, Maryland. My ex-girlfriend of 3 years was from there, so I spent some time there. And I think
you concur with me that it is a very affluent area
to
live.
It's as affluent as you can get. A lot of people from DC, government jobs, etc.
Yes, it's like country living right near DC. Right. Here's an example. Just an example, a couple of examples. This house, now it doesn't look like anything crazy, but a 7-bedroom, 5.5 baths, River Road, $2.35 million. They just sold in June. Okay. Here's another one.
Okay.
This is a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, nothing crazy. Okay. 2,400 square foot, $1.4 million. So yeah, this is a very, very affluent area. And I'm reminded of my research in the past with E. Howard Hunt. Now, at the time when E. Howard Hunt was working at the CIA, he also lived on River Road at this address. 11120 River Road, Rockville, Maryland. Okay. Today, the home there is valued at $1.626 million. It was a 3-bedroom, 3-bath house. This thing on the left is a street view. You can't even see it from the street. It's sitting on 2.5 acres, right off River Road. You can't see it from the street. But this is where E. Howard Hunt lived when he was working at the CIA. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, Joe, I was thinking, what is Unitarianism? What is the Unitarian Church? What I don't get, I don't know. So
I'm not sure either.
I had to go look it up. So apparently what the Unitarians believe is they do not believe in the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, as being equals. Okay. They believe in God and only God, the unitary nature of God as the singular and unique creator of the universe. They believe that Jesus Christ was inspired by God in his moral teachings and that he is the savior of humankind, but he is not equal to God himself. Okay.
Okay.
This religion was created, I believe, somewhere around 1630. Can't remember the guy's name. I think it was something Fox. But yeah, very interesting. And it also has roots in Hungary, the Polish, Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Principality of Transylvania, and Dracula in the mid 16th century. Yeah. So that's what they believe, right? And you always hear that Ruth Paine is a Quaker, right? Oh, I don't know what the hell Quakers believe, so I had to look it up.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, George Fox is the principal early leader of the Quakers. Okay. So Quakers are people who belong to the Religious Society of Friends. Okay. A historically Protestant Christian set of denominations. Members refer to each other as friends after John chapter 15, verse 14 in the Bible. And originally, others referred to them as Quakers, as the founder of the movement, George Fox, told a judge to quake before the authority of God. So that the Quakers...
To quake.
Yeah, like shake, like earthquake.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with oatmeal whatsoever. So Quakers quake in the presence of God. They fear God. The Friends are generally united by the belief in each human's ability to be guided by the inward light to make the witness of God known to everyone. Quakers have traditionally professed a priesthood of all believers inspired by the first epistle of Peter. They included those with evangelical, holiness, liberal, and traditional Quaker understandings of Christianity, as well as non-theist Quakers. To differing extents, the Friends avoid creeds and hierarchical structures in their religion. And actually, in 2017, there were an estimated 377,557 adult Quakers on this earth. And actually, 49% of Quakers, Joe, where in the world do you think that 49% of the Quakers reside in the world?
Pennsylvania?
Close. Africa.
We're close.
So half of all the Quakers in the world are from Africa, followed by only 22% in the North America. Well, in North America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The rest are just spread out everywhere else. So I was thinking, okay, who are some famous Quakers, Joe? Susan B. Anthony is a famous Quaker.
Okay.
Dame Judi Dench, old British smoke show. Who could have gotten one about 20 years ago? Let's see here. Oh, Richard Nixon was a Quaker. Isn't that wild?
Really?
Richard Nixon, yeah. William Penn, of course, the founder of Pennsylvania, which makes sense that a lot of Quakers are from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So that's just a few.
I bet that's the second highest percentage after Africa.
Did not know Richard Nixon was a Quaker. Very interesting.
Yes, well, Scott, actually, we missed it earlier, but Ruth is Quaker, like Nixon, but Sis was Unitarian.
We're on it, Scott. We are freaking on it, bud.
And he is, too. Thank you, Scott. And yes, Trey, some of the most wealthiest counties in the U.S. are in D.C. Yes, and I'm sure Virginia, right, is the northern part of Virginia. Was that Richmond?
No, Richmond's like in the southern part.
What's the northern part near DC?
Oh, it's called Northern Virginia.
Okay. Yeah.
But, you have like Alexandria ringing it, Arlington, Fairfax, Great Falls is where a lot of very, very wealthy people live, right by the Potomac River.
Yeah.
On the Virginia side. And then, so you have that on the Virginia side. And then on the Maryland side, you have River Road on the other side of the Potomac. That's why it's called the River Road. So a lot of these big mansions that are off River Road back up to the Potomac River flowing by them.
Yeah.
And I used to work down that way, and I would frequent River Road, and it was just huge mansion house after huge mansion house after huge mansion house, and yeah, you got to have money to live there.
Yep.
I mean, it's definitely not cheap.
And we're all paying for it because most of the money is from the government. And
yeah, because it's a hop, skip, and a jump to Langley from there, really, if going across the Chain Bridge, and yeah, you're right there. Boom.
Yes, sir. Well, that's very interesting. I did not know the difference.
Yeah, and before we get too far into things, Joe,
sure,
I wanted to bring this up from former Darksider Trey, who was kind enough to send me some photos and brave enough to venture into, I guess, a very dilapidated neighborhood in Shreveport, Louisiana, where this place is a gay 90s club where I'm sure Jack Ruby and General Walker frequented, David Ferry.
Yeah.
Right? The gay 90s in Shreveport. Here it is. That was it in its heyday, Joe.
Yeah.
Heyday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
This is it now.
Wow.
This is the gay 90s now. The
Wow.
sign is still there. And of course, the building still looks the same, but it appears to have a construction fence around it, which means to me that they're going to demolish it soon.
Okay. That's
Or do
sad.
some heavy remodeling.
I doubt it. I mean, I don't know if it's like downtown enough for it to be, doesn't look like it there. But I just got a really good idea, Rob.
What's that?
Let's see if they do demolish. Let's see if we could save and refurbish the sign. You can hang it over your house.
I'll put it right behind me.
I mean, that's huge. That's like 3 trays.
Or if they
there.
do demolish it, we could get Trey to go down there and grab some bricks from the gay 90s that we could sell here for the show on the
Hey, I would just like to have one like this.
real
brick.
bricks from the gay 90s.
Yeah, it's only special to us for some reason.
General Walker splooged on this one.
Oh man.
And awfully funny though, Joe. This picture here is of Clyde Hyde Jr.
Okay.
Okay. You know, funny we're talking about Sylvia Hyde, Ruth Hyde. This is Clyde Hyde. No relation, maybe. Operator of the Gay 90s Club on Louisiana Avenue, being escorted from the courthouse after failing to post a bond of $150,000.
That's a lot of money then. That's
Yeah.
over $1 million.
Yeah. I don't know what he did that was so bad,
Something.
but this was in 1970. So Clyde Hyde is getting escorted out of the courthouse in 1970. Operator of the Gay 90s Club on Louisiana Avenue. So thank you, Trey, to this plethora of gay information, gay 90s information.
Yeah.
So yeah, we appreciate all the fun
Mm-hmm.
boots on the ground photos. So thank you, Trey.
Yeah. I thought he was joking last week when he said he was going, but
No, apparently not.
I respect that.
Yes. Well, actually, in his email, he said he didn't go, but he made his wife go and take pictures. So
Okay. Well, wasn't he in the bottom of the picture?
I don't know. Way to send your wife into the dangerous neighborhood to get pictures. We appreciate it. The Lone Gunman podcast appreciates her hard work, Trey.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So from that, let's get into the Paines. Joseph?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it, Rob. And so when, every week as we decide topics here, we were talking after the show last week, we were talking about the death of Sylvia Hoke. And, we thought we'd do something on the Paines. And I had something that I had heard a lot and read about, but I've never really looked into, like many other things. And that is the meetings of that Michael Paine allegedly went to with Lee Harvey Oswald. Thank you, Lee. I think there was a couple other we missed, but so
I'm on it, bud. I'm on it.
I was always under the impression that they were going together to these extreme right-wing meetings, right? Lee and Michael Paine, and they had gone to a General Walker, a John Birch Society meeting that General Walker was there. That's kind of what I read, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, but allegedly that's not, or technically that's not true, because the only meeting and take it for what it's worth. It's Michael Paine saying that, but there is some corroboration with granted, a friend from Bell Helicopter, but there is actually no evidence that they went to a right-wing John Birch Society meeting together. And the timeline kind of goes like this, and I'm going to get into some of the details. Lee goes to the John Birch Society meeting headed by General Walker on October 23rd, 1963. The next night, Michael goes to a sparsely attended John Birch Society meeting, and this was sparsely attended because a lot of the Birchers were outside spitting on and I guess hitting with some type of placard Adlai Stevenson. But Michael admitted this was just one of the few right-wing meetings he had attended. The only time that is documented that they had been to a meeting together was October 25th, 1963, and these happened in 3 consecutive days, where Michael takes Lee to an ACLU meeting. Both Ruth and Michael were active members of the ACLU, and Oswald later that week applies for membership in the ACLU. But the application isn't processed by the time of the JFK assassination. So that's kind of interesting because you remember the ACLU Oswald was exploring the possibility of having them represent him when he was in the DPD. Of course, he was very kind of.
They did send a lawyer, right?
They did. He gave them "I'll let you know" type of thing. He was kind of focused on the John Apt, right? That getting
allegedly.
Yes. So, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But I'm just going to read a quick little bio of Michael Paine. For I know most of the people here are very familiar with him, but just in case some new people or whatever, Michael Paine was born in 1928. He obviously became notable after the JFK assassination, being an acquaintance of Lee Harvey Oswald. His wife, Ruth Paine, housed Oswald's wife, Marina, and her kid and 2 kids for the months prior to the assassination. And, it's kind of funny, Rob, you talk about the rich areas of Maryland and Virginia, right? Well, Michael Paine, you really can't get more of an elite than Michael Paine in terms of his background. So I'm going to read a little bit from The 12 Who Built the Oswald Legend by Bill Simpich. Michael Paine presents a sea of contradictions. Like Oswald, he combines some left-wing and right-wing tendencies. He is a descendant of Robert Treat Paine, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Michael Paine's mother was Ruth Forbes, of the well-known Forbes family. She married Lyman Paine in 1926, divorced in 1934. After that time, Michael kind of saw his father infrequently. We'll get into his father in a little bit. He always considered himself more of a part of the Forbes family than the Paine family, more of his mother's side than his dad's side, in other words. He worked for Bell Helicopter as an engineer, and he worked with ex-Nazi Walter Dornberger, who was the supervisor of Michael Paine's division of classified projects for Bell Aerospace. Dornberger was the former head of the Nazi Peenemünde Rocket Center and surrendered to the U.S. Army with his.
Pretty sure you said that wrong, but please proceed.
It's Peenemunde. Peenemünde. I can't do it. I can't do it in a German accent. I'm sure it's like, how would you say it?
I don't know. I'm just busting your balls.
Okay. Peenemünde. I can't do it. And but he surrendered to the U.S. Army with his compatriot Werner von Braun, and he obviously of the infamous Operation Paperclip, right? And so that's very interesting. He worked under him. Michael's stepfather, Arthur Young, invented the original Bell helicopter. Young was proud of the uses of the helicopter in the fighting forest fires and evacuations in Korea, but didn't like its conversion into an attack weapon in Vietnam. After Michael
Hey,
flunked
real
out
quick,
of
Joe.
yeah,
I was getting my balls busted about the picture of the helicopter on the thumbnail.
yeah,
I know it's not a Bell helicopter. Calm down. I didn't look for a Bell helicopter. I just looked for a helicopter, and I went with one that looked like it was from the Vietnam era. So that is not a representative of a Bell helicopter, although it may be, according to Trey, a prototype.
okay,
Possible.
right.
Yes. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. So Michael's stepfather, Arthur Young, obviously invented the Bell helicopter. The company was so successful that the company changed its name from Bell Aircraft to Bell Helicopter. So this is Michael Paine's stepfather, who ended up remarrying his mother after the parents got divorced. His birth father, Lehman Paine, was a well-known architect and a lifelong left-wing Trotskyist. The FBI considered his father, Lyman Paine, and his wife, Freddie, to be a national threat, placing both of them on the security index for the years prior and including 1963. Meanwhile, Michael had no problem maintaining his confidential clearance to work at Bell Helicopter, whose Bell Security Service also worked with the CIA and FBI on a regular basis. Michael Paine tried to distance himself from his father, being that he was on the security index and a very controversial figure. But the Warren Commission really kind of nailed down, like, when did you last see him? Didn't he come visit you here? So they were following his father, and they knew. So that was very interesting. But so a lot of money, descendants, starting from signers of the Declaration of Independence, the Forbes family, and then, of course, his stepfather, the founder of Bell Helicopter, or the inventor of the Bell Helicopter. So one thing, like I told you, I was interested in, bring this back up, and what right-wing meetings did Lee and Michael go to together? And allegedly, they only went to the ACLU meeting together. But so Michael Paine had a very long testimony for the Warren Commission, as well as Ruth, right? But I didn't know that they actually interviewed him a second time, Rob, in Dallas, Texas on July 23rd, 1964. His first one. Yes, his first one was in March 18th, 64, I believe. So this is Mr. Liebler asking him. I'm going to read a little bit from this. Have you testified before? He's reading all the rules. Mr. Paine, I have testified before. You testified previously that when you first met Lee Oswald in April 63, that you discussed to some extent General Edwin Walker. Yes, I think we did discuss him in passing. Mr. Liebler, did Oswald ever indicate to you in any way that he'd been involved in the attempt on General Walker's life? Michael Paine, not that I remember at all. Nothing whatsoever. I think the only thing he did, the only thing that I could remember now, was that he seemed to have a smile in regard to that person. It was inscrutable. I didn't know what he was smiling about. I just thought perhaps it was the guy assumed it was rapport for a person who was an extreme proponent of a certain kind of patriotism or something. Mr. Liebler, General Walker was? Yes. Now, when you first met Oswald, as I recall, on April 2nd, 1963, so Mr. Paine is not thrilled with being called back here. And he goes, you have been keeping up with all of this. I have been thinking about Oswald for a year.
Well, hang on there, Joe. Hold on.
Yeah.
He says that Michael Paine didn't meet Oswald until April 2nd of 63. That is wrong.
Yeah, it was February.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was
Huh.
yeah. But this is Mr. Liebler saying so. Mr.
Right. You should know better.
Right, for sure. And this is not the first interview. Keep in mind, this is second, so he should have had this
lined up.
nailed down by then.
And just
But
as an aside, Joe, Tiny Dancer is making lasagna,
Mhm.
and I will have a slice. That sounds delicious right about now.
Oh, send it our way.
Yes.
We will eat it with some Silk City.
Nothing like some yeah. We'll put some hot sauce on that shit. Hell yes.
Do you do that, or I do it like I put a ton of crushed red pepper on? I don't always do hot sauce, but I'm known to sometimes.
Well, you can put it in with the meat mix, and then add it to lasagna.
Yeah,
when you layer it up,
for sure.
Mm.
So Mr. Liebler continues. You didn't see Oswald after that one time in April until after he had returned from New Orleans. Mr. Paine, I guess that's right. Mr. Liebler.
Well, even Payne's wrong.
Yeah, he's kind of just, I think he's just kind of like, get this, he's not going to correct them. He has no motivation to do so.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that would have been October 63. That's when he got back. Mr. Paine, yes. So on June 11th, 64, Marina Oswald testified before the commission, at which time the following colloquy occurred, as indicated on page.
What?
Colloquy.
The what?
Colloquy. Stop trying to mess me up.
Hold on, Joe. We are being corrected here.
Okay.
Apparently, only Ruth met Lee in February. Michael didn't meet him until April 2nd. Pardon us, we thought they were together at the Magnolia party. But I guess we stand corrected, Joseph.
Yeah. I guess Mr. Liebler did have it right. And hey, that's why we have you guys here, right?
Yes, he did.
That's why we have our very what is that? So Mr. Liebler is now going to quote Mrs. Oswald's testimony to the commission and then read it back to Mr. Paine. So this is Mr. McKenzie, who was Marina Oswald's lawyer at this time in 64. Ms. Oswald, and definitely an informant. Ms. Oswald, you said a few minutes ago that Mr. Paine knew or knows more about your husband's attitude towards the United States than you do. Why do you say that? Marina, because my husband's favorite topic of discussion was politics, and whoever he was with, he talked to them politics. And Mr. Paine was with him a fair amount, and I'm sure they talked about politics. She actually, it's transcribed wrong. She said, I'm not sure they talked about politics, but Mr. Liebler corrects it and says, I'm quite sure they talked about politics, which is consistent with what we've gone over with Lee's character, right, Rob?
Yeah.
Marina, they went to, keep in mind the wording here, ladies and gentlemen. They went to meetings of some kind together. That's plural. I don't know what kind of meetings. Mr. McKenzie, do you know where the meetings were? Marina, in Dallas. After they came back from some meeting, my husband said to me something about Walker being at this meeting. So Marina is saying Lee and Michael spent a fair amount, I think that was what the word she used, a fair amount of time together. And if you were spending time with Lee, you were talking about some aspect of politics. So then Mr. Liebler goes back to grilling Michael Paine. Do you remember at any time going with Lee Oswald at a meeting at which Miss Walker was present? No, the only meeting I went to was the ACLU meeting that I recall. Mr. Liebler, do you recall going to any meetings yourself in October 63 with or without Oswald at which General Walker was present? Mr. Paine, General Walker was present at Oswald mentioned the UN U.S. Day meeting held by the rightists, which occurred a day or two nights before the ACLU meeting. He had been to that meeting by himself. I had gone to the same evening to a John Birch meeting. We were not together, but they were two things that occurred simultaneously. And that's where Lee, by his report at the ACLU meeting, said he was and Walker was there. Maybe that's what Marina had in mind. Mr. Liebler, but you yourself don't have any recollection of ever being at a meeting when Walker was there. No, I've never seen General Walker that I can recall. And Mr. Liebler is like, he's coming down on him. He goes, you have never seen Walker? It seems like he kind of knows something, right? Because he's really nailing down this point. Mr. Paine, unless he was in a year previous to that, I had been to an indignation committee meeting. No, that is the answer to your previous question. Mr. Liebler, again, asking again, do you, best of your recollection, you don't ever remember seeing General Walker present. That's right. Or having been at a meeting at which you subsequently learned that he was present, although you didn't see him. That's right. I can't remember about the previous year, but I don't think that has relevancy. So he's not denying it. He's saying, I don't know. I don't see.
Well, I think they had him dead to rights because I think that he signed up for something at the meeting that they got a hold of, like a mailing list or something.
Oswald?
No, Paine.
Oh,
that's why I think he was drilling down on him a little bit.
Yeah,
because he knew something. Yeah.
No, it seems like Mr. Liebler knows something and is really hammering down on that point. He asked it 3 or 4 times in different ways. So
yeah,
really kind of interesting. And this is his second testimony, right? So this is them following up on his first and what they found out in between, and from Marina in June, right? From her lawyer. Hello.
What's up, Jason?
Yes, hello. So, well, since the time you met Oswald, you were at no meetings at which General Walker was present to your knowledge. Mr. Paine, that's true. Mr. Liebler, Marina Oswald goes on to testify, and I will recapitulate part of it. This is Marina's quote here. After they came back from some meeting, my husband said to me something about Walker being at this meeting, and he said, Paine knows that I shot him. That's interesting that Marina is saying this. Do you have any reason to believe that? The first question, of course, is, and I've already asked you that, and you've testified you did not know Oswald shot Walker prior to the assassination. Is that correct? Michael Paine, that's right. Now, do you have any reason to believe that Oswald might have thought that you knew that he, Oswald, had shot at General Walker? Michael Paine, I can't see how he would have thought I knew that. I just don't see. He might have said something that revealed that, and I didn't catch his meaning, so it never sunk into me at all. That is to assume that he wasn't lying, and that was the only way I can explain it. Almost done here. So, Mr. Lieber, so you think the testimony that Marina has given is either the result of misapprehension or a lie on Oswald's part or on Marina's part? Mr. Paine, yes. And you don't have any doubt about that whatsoever. Again, hammering down on him. He must have been so frustrated at this point, Michael Paine. I am perfectly certain that I didn't know that he shot at Walker. Marina herself goes on to say, I do not know whether this was the truth or not, but this is what they told me. And I presume she meant that's what Lee had told her. And we're going to get into some favorite characters of ours here, Rob. Michael Paine. Now, wait, this is, it would be well to check for that this is the testimony in June, you said, and that they could possibly be Martin and Thorne. I don't know much about Martin and Thorne either, but I had the impression they were telling her stories. Well, let's do a little timeout here, because he goes, now wait, this is testimony in June. Now, because Rob and I are pretty much experts on John Martin Thorne, and James Earl Martin, we know that they were relieved of their services in mid-November or February. I'm sorry, mid-February. So Mackenzie is the new lawyer. James Earl Martin is way out of the picture. So he's blaming them for an interview that happened 4 months after they were.
Yeah.
Which I think, I
They're
think
basically saying that they were filling her head full of all this shit when they had her.
And I think they did for sure.
Well, yeah.
But they wouldn't in June because they weren't with her in June.
No.
So interesting. So one other thing I found, and this doesn't really have to do with our current topic, but later in this testimony, Mr. Liebler asks him, he shows him a photograph which depicts the same individual as in commission exhibit number 237 and asks you to examine it and tell me if you recognize the individual. So Mr. Liebler is asking Michael Paine about the Mexico City mystery man that I have pictured on the left here, commission exhibit 237. Mr. Paine, I remember the same face on the picture that I saw earlier, but I had not at that time and do not now recognize the person. You think that would be the end of the answer, but no. He says, but he could work at Bell Helicopter. Now that really
not
stuck
Taco
out.
Bell. Bell
Yes,
Helicopter.
not Taco Bell. And what I wrote down here is, why is Liebler asking Michael Paine about C237? Maybe they asked everyone about it. I don't know. And more curiously, when Michael already has a great answer, why did he throw in at the end? But he could work at Bell Helicopter. I have no idea. So
he looks like a Nazi bastard scumbag.
Yeah. So that is very interesting. And before we'll check some comments before I get into my next little mini segment, and then I'm going to hand it off to you, Rob.
Yeah. I'm getting hungry reading all these comments with lasagna and orzo chicken, Henry Hill's gravy recipe. Hopefully it doesn't contain brain matter.
Yeah. 47 people in the chat now, Rob. Thank you to everyone that is joining us live.
Watching. What is up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the show if you're digging what you're hearing.
Yeah.
We
go live every Friday night, 7 p.m.
Because you can't comment unless you're subscribed. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to get notified every time we go live, people.
Yeah. And tell us that you're new and you just subscribed, and we'll give you a shout out here.
Yeah, we're very nice. We won't bite. I promise.
For the most part. So essentially my summary of that is that there is no documented case of Michael Paine going to right-wing John Birch Society meetings with Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm not saying they didn't go to one together. I'm saying and Marina, as we just saw, mentioned they were going to meetings, and Lee said that they saw Walker there. I'm not trusting Michael's account on this per se, but
no, he sounds like he didn't want to give them anything
right
about what he was doing with Oswald, because that's the thing, Joe, with all these folks that were somewhat in Oswald's circle prior to the assassination, none of them want to cop to the fact that they were friends with this guy.
Yeah.
Because then they'd be guilty by association. You have to remember, this is, the height of the Cold War, and everybody was worried about being blacklisted as a communist. And with some of Paine's relatives, which we'll get into here in a second, views, it's better that he just keep his mouth shut and deny.
For sure. And Rob, before I move on, I want to touch on the interesting thought that, so of course we know about the Lee's attempt on Walker, right? That's what, and I said attempt in air quotations for the people listening on audio only. It would be very interesting. So I'm going to assume, just for argument's sake, that he did shoot at Walker, right?
Okay.
In April.
Well, didn't they have dinner with the Paines on April 10th?
So it was early April. I think it was the 10th.
And that's the same night he supposedly shot at Walker. So you're telling me this guy has this nice dinner with the Paines, and I'm sure they're talking and about all this stuff, and somewhere
sure. I'm not sure if that was the same night as I didn't know.
I'm pulling that out of the comments section from people who know more than we do. So,
yeah. But of course, the DeMoran Shields hadn't left yet, and there's that whole.
Sally is confirming.
The 10th.
Michael Paine said he had dinner that night with the Oswalds. So,
which is really interesting as well, right? Because
considering there was 2 people seen fleeing the scene of the General Walker shooting.
Yeah. So
yeah.
say he did shoot at Walker, right?
Yeah. Say Michael Paine got him all cooked up, and they were all, hey, let's go shoot that mother effer,
So say that happened. Then
in
October, about 6 months later, he's then going to a John Birch Society meeting with General Walker there. That's an interesting dynamic if you think he had tried to shoot at him 6 months earlier.
Holy crap, Joe. I don't even know my own show, folks. Clyde Hyde was mentioned in the Lone Gunman number 169. Seems like he was running guns. Wow. Trey with a recall. I have no clue. Again, that was a long time ago.
It's all a blur.
Information in, information out. In and out.
Yeah. That's a great catch there, Trey. But that would be interesting if he had shot at him and then went to a meeting with him a month before he shot the president.
That's right, Tiny. Tell him. Slam that like button, folks. The thumbs up is what it looks like. Like this.
Yes.
We appreciate it. Yeah.
Yes, it helps the algo, and the algo doesn't really like us to start.
That is correct. We are shadow banned, and whatever.
Yeah, it happens. So, so as I was looking into this, and as I was kind of trying to figure out exactly what meetings they went to together, at least from documented, you have Lee going to the John Birch Society meeting on October 23rd, headed by General Walker. The next day, you have Michael going to a different John Birch Society meeting where some of the Birchers were attacking Adlai Stevenson. And the day after that, you have Michael taking Lee to an ACLU meeting, Lee later applying for that. So I was looking into this ACLU meeting, and of course, as we like to do, Rob, we try to go back to the earliest documents we could find. This is an FBI interview of Michael Paine, 11/25/63. Paine stated on one occasion he took Lee Oswald to a meeting at the ACLU at Southern Methodist University. Now I'm going to give you guys a little hint. Southern Methodist University is my new Shreveport. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. During this meeting, some mention was made about the John Birch Society. This is the ACLU meeting. Comments were made about the alleged anti-Semitism in the John Birch Societies. Someone else made a comment that even though some members of the John Birch Society might be anti-Semitic, it should not be attributed to the ACLU. Thereupon, Oswald spoke out and gave what appeared to be a logical and appropriate instances of anti-Semitism by the John Birch Societies. So here you have Michael Paine saying that Oswald spoke out at this ACLU meeting about the anti-Semitism by the John Birch Society. And after the meeting, we're going to get into this fellow here.
Well, hang on. Before we get into Frank Christinic, Joe.
Yeah, sure.
Mike McDougal, Big Mike, Alpha 66 wins comment of the night. Here it is. No, y'all won't bite, but y'all will have a fat guy run all over Dealey Plaza portraying characters in Hot August. But no, y'all don't bite. Oh, we love you, Mike.
Was that our idea or was that helping Alex's?
And Perpetual Concepts coming through from the Shadow Sun. We appreciate it.
Yeah. He said he commented earlier, he felt my pain by having my pain, pun intended, of having to miss my golf outing from 3,500 miles away. He felt my pain. So thank you, Perpetual Concepts.
Yes.
It's not easy to give up a tea time. They're expensive, sir.
Sorry, back to Christinic. Frankie Christinic.
Yes. So this is a guy who worked with Mr. Michael Paine at Bella Helicopter, Arlington, Texas, and got into a discussion on free enterprise with Lee Oswald. Now, it wasn't a discussion. It was like an argument that almost turned into a fight. Paine said he paid very little attention to this argument that involved both people he took to the meeting, which was his friend Frank and Lee. So they both got in a fight and he wasn't paying attention. I'm, of course, being sarcastic here. That's ridiculous. Paine stated that on the night before Adlai Stevenson appeared in Dallas, Lee Oswald attended a right-wing rally held at the Civic Auditorium in Dallas, and that he presumed that the John Birch Society was one of the sponsors of the meeting. And Oswald had gotten information about the John Birch Society during this meeting. So interesting that he's reporting this. How do you know about it? Did he tell you when you got back, or did you actually go with him, Mr. Michael Paine? So really quickly, Frank Christinic, he was with Michael Paine on the morning and lunch of the assassination. And he and Michael Paine and Frank were talking about the character, ironically, of assassins at that lunch of all things, with another co-op student named Dave Noel. But when it was mentioned the TSBD was possibly the source of the shots, Michael Paine told Frank Christinic that's where Lee Oswald worked, and Frank suggested that Michael Paine call the FBI and tell them. Now, Michael Paine did not call the FBI and tell them.
Sus.
Yes. So Mr. Frank Christinic was actually interviewed by the Warren Commission pretty much about that. And they're talking about the ACLU meeting. After the film, Mr. Christinic says there was a discussion about civil liberties and about the film in general and about movement of the South and some talk concerning General Walker. The first thing I made notice is Oswald, he stood up and made a remark about General Walker in reference to him not only being anti-Catholic, but anti-Semitic in regard to his comments about the Pope. Oswald said to the assembled group at the time that he had been to a meeting 2 days prior at which General Walker was present. So that's his first. During Mr. Liebler again, during the time after the ACLU, did Oswald say anything about his discussion with Mr. Christinic? Mr. Paine, I don't believe so. Did Mr. Christinic say anything? Did you discuss it with him? Yes, you did. He told me that they had argued, but that he had pointed out that he had employed a few people himself. You mentioned that Oswald and Christinic almost got into a fight. And one other thing I was looking at as I was looking into this guy, on November 12th, 1963, this is the Mary Farrell chronologies. That was the date Oswald's letter to the Russian embassy telling of his Mexico trip, the new baby's birth, and inquiring about their visas. Marina denies that she mailed this letter, but Mr. Michael Paine shows a copy of Oswald's letter to the Russian embassy to Michael Paine. So Ruth is showing it to Michael. Then Colonel J.D. Willem.
Pay attention, folks. This is very important here. This is very, very suspect. So go ahead, Joe.
Does it tie in with yours?
No.
Oh,
but
okay.
On November the 12th, 10 days before the assassination, a Colonel J.D. Wilmoth, who is a Russian language instructor at Arlington State College, is told of Marina by Frank Kristinek, a Bell helicopter employee and friend of Michael Paine. This Colonel Wilmoth, who lives with his mother, calls Marina at Irving from Arlington, and he goes to visit them 2 days before the assassination in person at Ruth Paine's house, which is interesting. Colonel.
Yeah. And if you look at this, Rob, it says after the highlighted Frank Kristinek, redacted Bell helicopter employee. And I was trying to put together in my mind, what could that word be?
It's not former.
I was trying to put together a ton of words. If anyone in the chat has an idea of what that word
You
could be.
kind of see it under the redaction, but it's hard
It's
to
like
figure out what it is.
6 letters, maybe. It's not long.
Huh. A Nazi. I don't know.
Yeah, hey, well, you never know. But, one thing I don't know if we have a picture of Frank Kristinek, but you remember how I brought up that he said he could be a Bell employee of the CE, 237? And I just had the thought, what if that was Frank Kristinek? I'm not saying it is, but I had that random thought because this guy seems to be more involved than just a coworker of Michael Paine. He's talking with Marina. He's talking to this colonel. He's there with Michael Paine the morning of the assassination, working with them, which indicates to me that they were very close. They weren't just colleagues. They were almost like BFFs. They had dinner together once or twice a week, I was reading, and this was when they were separated, Ruth and Michael conveniently separated. So what's going on with this guy? I never heard of the name before this week. I think I have one more slide with him. All right, that's it. So very interesting, but I think that Michael Paine definitely went to more meetings than that ACLU meeting with Lee. Marina said they and meetings, right? It wasn't just a transcription with meeting to meetings. It seemed like it was plural. And it seemed like Michael obviously was trying to, like you mentioned earlier, play it down. And his friend from Bell Helicopter, who got in an argument with Oswald, who's getting involved with Marina. He actually met Marina at some point. Not sure what's going on here, but I was unaware of this character. And a little sus there, Bell Helicopter.
Yeah. Because I think there's something, too, about that him and Michael Paine would try to recruit these young college kids at Southern Methodist who were pro-communist or pro-Castro, to kind of out them. Same thing that like Guy Bannister was doing down in New Orleans, which is interesting.
Yeah. And I think I was reading that they were arguing on the pro-Cuba side of it, which is very interesting. But before
I want to see that redacted thing again. If you could pop that back up. Sure.
I just want to read one more little small paragraph before. So it's.
Can you make that bigger, like you just did? Make
Oh.
Yeah, make that bigger. Damn.
What could that mean?
We're saying
Former.
covert, secret, current. I don't think it would be former because the F would be bigger at the beginning.
Yeah. Covert could be.
Yeah.
Secret. Oh, that you would think the T would be legible. It's very well.
Yeah, but like Scott says, 6 letters, no ascenders or descenders. Yep.
Yeah, I thought it was 6 letters as well. But just something that stuck out to me, it seems like this guy was more than just a colleague. I'm not sure. I mean, I just found him a couple days ago, and there's not many. I think there's only 7 reports on him. And when you search him on Mary Farrell, and most of them are Michael Paine's references. But one more thing, and from Frank Kristinek, who told the Warren Commission about how Michael Paine reacted when he heard the news that J.B. Tippit had been killed. We heard, this is Kristinek, we heard that Officer Tippit had been shot, and that it wasn't very long after that it came through that the Oswald fellow had been captured, had a pistol with him, and Michael used some expression. I have forgotten exactly what the expression was. And then he said, in quotations, the stupid, probably son of a bitch or something I have forgotten. It wasn't a complimentary thing. He said he isn't even supposed to have a gun, and that I can quote. So he's pretty emphatic about that. He is not, he repeats it. He is not even supposed to have a gun. Wow. So Michael Paine knew a little more just based on that reaction, or knew that Oswald. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on with that, but it's very interesting. Thank you, Paula Jane, very much. I love you. You're muted.
I said, yeah, exactly, Sally. Wheel of Fortune. I'll take an E, Pat. I'd like to buy a vowel.
So,
well, very interesting stuff, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy, for that.
Yeah.
So I came across some FBI documents about the background of Ruth Hyde Paine and her relatives. This is an FBI report. And it states thusly: the February 14th, 1948 issue of the Ohio State News, a newspaper published by the students of Ohio State University, contained an article which was captioned, quote, Ohio college students initiate educational democracy drive, end quote. This article states that more than 100 students from colleges and universities throughout Ohio have initiated a drive for democracy in education. The article indicated that Ohio Council for Educational Democracy was formed in Columbus over the past weekend to obtain this goal. Their organization would work to do away with racial and religious discrimination in Ohio colleges. Carl Hyde of Antioch College was elected as vice chairman of the organization. Carl Hyde, Antioch College. Confidential informant T1, another U.S. government agency which conducts intelligence investigations. Wonder who that could be.
This is the FBI, right? Saying,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Advised on December 17th, 1952, that Mrs. William A. Hyde of Summit Street in Columbus, Ohio, had admitted to many neighbors during the past years that she was a communist. Mrs. Hyde's daughter was a student at Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. The same informant advised that Ruth Avery Hyde, otherwise known as Ruth Hyde Paine of Summit Street in Columbus, was listed in the 1951-52 Antioch Student Directory of Antioch College, Yellow Springs, Ohio. Another informant, confidential informant T2, advised on December 27, 1954, that the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom met on December 20th of 54 at 70 East Como Street in Columbus, Ohio. Mrs. Carl Hyde was the speaker of the evening and showed a film entitled The Toy Maker. Totally not about dildos. The theme of the film was that although men are different, they are all made by one creator, and only this realization makes them conscious of the fact that when they destroy others, they are also destroying themselves. Weird. A characterization of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom is contained in the appendix of the report. Mr. Lauren Wyndham, Assistant United States Attorney, Southern District of Columbus, Ohio, sent a letter to the Cincinnati office of the FBI dated June 4th, 1953, requesting an investigation of Carl Dudley Hyde to determine the validity of his claim of conscientious objector in connection with his classification under the Selective Service System, which means that he did not pick a branch of the armed services to serve in pending another draft.
And this is her father?
No. Well, possibly. This investigation revealed that his parents, Carl Hyde's parents, were William Avery Hyde and Carol Elizabeth Hyde, and that he resided at Summit Street, Columbus, Ohio, from 45 to 48. He joined the Religious Society of Friends, otherwise known as the Quakers, in Cleveland, Ohio in 1949, and based his objections to military service on religious convictions and beliefs. He traveled to England in 1953 to study the possibility of living in a religious community called the Society of Brothers, otherwise known as a sausage party. The February 12, 47 issue of the Daytona Daily News, a daily newspaper published in Dayton, Ohio, contained an article which indicated that Carl Dudley Hyde was one of 15 residents of Yellow Springs, Ohio, who sent their draft registration cards to Representative Joseph Martin. There's another one.
Well, could that be the Joseph James Martin, the guy we found, the first one in the late 50s?
This guy's a representative from Ohio to the House, a representative.
Oh, wow.
Actually, he was the Speaker of the House. Hold on. He sent their draft registration cards to Representative Joseph Martin, Speaker of the House, in 1947, apparently, Joe, accompanied with a letter that read in part, "We see any military programs involving peacetime conscription as a drastic violation of civil rights and a threat to the peacemaking efforts of the United Nations." Most of the senders were also students of Antioch College.
Wait, so Rob.
Yeah.
In 1947, you're telling me there was a Joseph Martin that was a speaker that was at the House of Ohio?
No, he was the Speaker of the House. A representative from Ohio was Joseph Martin, but he was also Speaker of the House.
Do you find that as mind-blowing as I do, considering what you know about my assumption with that number?
Yeah.
The
You're welcome.
is broken. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Hyde said that all of the family, including himself, were tolerant of others, quote, point of view, and explained by this he meant that should a person make it known that he is a communist and not engage in subversion, they would not feel duty bound to advise respective authorities of this person's views, which means basically he's not going to snitch on a communist during peacetime. Okay. The following investigation was conducted by Special Agent Robert Mailer and Francis Short at Columbus, Ohio. Efforts to locate Mrs. Carol Hyde, mother of Mrs. Ruth Paine, were made December 2nd, 1963 at 4400 Glenmauer Avenue. It was observed that this residence was currently empty.
About 10 days after the assassination.
Yeah.
Mrs. So they're trying to find her. They're trying to find her mother.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Mrs. Joan Barker, a neighbor, advised it on December 2nd, 63, that she was closely associated with Mrs. Carol Hyde more than any other neighbor. Carol Hyde, she said, had not lived next door since 1961. She presently attends Oberlin Theological Seminary in Oberlin, Ohio, and lives there. During the summer of 63, she said Carol Hyde was ordained a minister in the First Unitarian Church, 93 West Weisenheimer Road in Columbus, Ohio. So here we have Sylvia Hyde Hoke's mother was a minister in the Unitarian Church. And her father was a Quaker. Yeah. So Mrs. Barker said the residence had been rented to a Jean Jolliffe, who has recently moved away to Racine Avenue in Columbus, Ohio. The residence is now sitting empty, although still owned apparently by Carol Hyde at this time. Mrs. Barker said Carol Hyde was divorced from her husband William at Franklin County in 1961. During an unknown period in 1960, her ex-husband had Mrs. Hyde committed to the Harding Sanitarium in Worthington, Ohio, as a mental patient. Okay? So in 1961, when she divorced her husband, he had her committed to a mental institution. And she never went back to live in the family home, and I guess neither did he, although they apparently still owned it and were renting it out. I guess from the sanitarium, she moved into a seminary and became a Unitarian preacher, if that makes any sense at all. Carol Hyde is not expected to return to Columbus in the near future. Her last visits to Columbus was during September 63, at which time her daughter, Ruth Paine, stayed overnight in Columbus, then went to visit her brother, Carl, in Yellow Springs, Ohio. So Carl is Ruth Paine's brother and Sylvia's brother.
Okay.
Mrs. Barker said she had never heard Mrs. Hyde, mention the name Oswald until the two spoke on a long-distance telephone call on November 29th, 1963, concerning this property next door, at which time Mrs. Hyde mentioned that a Mrs. Oswald had been living with her daughter Ruth in Irving, Texas. During this conversation, Carol Hyde also told Mrs. Barker after she graduates from the theological seminary, her ambition is to become a chaplain in a mental institution. So apparently she liked it so much there at the mental institution, she wanted to go back as a minister.
And Rob, Paula said Quakers and Unitarians are very compatible. That's not weird at all. So it's maybe like a Catholic and another
and a Christian.
Yeah, exactly, type of thing. Okay.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just
maybe not a good analogy, but something like that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Back to William Avery Hyde, which is I believe, Ruth's father,
Right.
at apartment 105 on Park Street, Columbus, Ohio, born June 4th, 1902 in Palo Alto, California, employed as a actuary, whatever that is, for the Nationwide Insurance Company of North High Street, was interviewed on December 2nd, 1963. He said he is the father of Ruth Paine, born Hyde, who is married to Michael Paine of Irving, Texas. He is also the father of Mrs. Sylvia Hoke of Juanetta Road, Bethesda, Maryland, and the father of Dr. Carl Hyde of President Street in Yellow Springs, Ohio. I guess he stayed near Antioch College. He said he is divorced from Carol Elizabeth Hyde. Yes. He explained he and his ex-wife are sixth cousins with the same surname. Okay? So get this shit, people. William Hyde marries his sixth cousin, Carol Hyde. That was her name before they got married. Her name was also Hyde. Insert cruel inbred joke here.
Sixth cousin?
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was such a thing. And how rare is it to have the same, like my second cousins, for example, most of them don't have my same last name. So you're talking 6. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It must have been, the family reunion where they locked the eyes from across the room, and just said, hey, you know what? Screw it. We might be related, but hey, I'm down.
Hey, if I had a dope sixth cousin, I can't say that I would,
Yeah, you roll the dice at that point.
That wouldn't deter me. I don't think at that point. I think my limit is third. I'd go fourth and over.
There you go. That's a good rule to live by, Joe.
I'm joking.
Where were we here? During their visit over Labor Day weekend, William Hyde understood that Marina Oswald and her daughter had joined Lee Harvey Oswald at New Orleans, Louisiana, where the latter went to seek employment. During this visit, Ruth Paine expressed concern about Marina, who was pregnant at the time. She wanted Marina to join her at Irving so Marina could have the child there. Ruth Paine returned to Texas via New Orleans, where she picked up Marina and her daughter, and William Hyde believed that Lee Harvey Oswald remained in New Orleans at that time, since he did not return to Texas with Ruth and Marina in June. And then we have William Hyde could not explain why his daughter and Marina were so closely attached.
Mm-hmm.
Except that his daughter was interested in in studying the Russian language. And though her membership in the Society of Friends, she felt learning the Russian language would assist in lessening the tensions between the United States and Russia. So wait a minute. She thought that learning the Russian language would help to lessen the tensions between America and Russia. Okay.
Yeah. Trey has a great quote here. If you think a family reunion is a good place to find a date, you might be a Hyde.
Yeah. So Clyde Hyde is not out of the realm of possibility of being related to these folks. We have our Shreveport connection.
Things lead back there, yes. That and SMU.
He added, Marina Oswald was apparently very interesting to his daughter and could offer her substantial comfort, or his daughter would not have had anything to do with her. He said he knew of no subversive connections that Marina Oswald may have had. William Hyde continued and said that Ruth and Marina's daughter lived together away from their respective husbands since September of 63 until just recently when Marina Oswald was placed in protective custody by the U.S. Secret Service. A daughter, Rachel Oswald, was born to Marina in October of 1963. William Hyde said he received a letter from his daughter Ruth, written on October 19th, in which she mentioned that Marina and her daughter were a comfort to her. She also mentioned that Lee Harvey Oswald was a weekend visitor and that he had taken a room in Dallas separate from the wife and had obtained employment in Dallas, Texas. The time of Oswald's arrival at Dallas was not mentioned, nor was the type of employment described. In a sentence, Ruth Paine said Lee Harvey Oswald had proven himself to be a fine family man after all. This is Ruth Paine saying this, folks.
It's quite a different description than.
Yeah, in a letter to her father, she says that Lee Harvey Oswald had proven himself to be a fine family man after all. That's a giant contradiction from
huge contradiction.
What was said later. William Hyde did not know the significance of this sentence. Yeah, no shit, FBI. Thank you. He received another letter from Ruth dated November 6, 1963, which announced the birth of Marina's child, Rachel. William Hyde said during his visit with his daughter during the Labor Day weekend, the information concerning Marina was not really significant to him.
So you're talking end of September or beginning of September 63, Labor Day weekend-ish?
Yeah.
Okay.
He explained he had never met another Marina. He explained that he had never met either Marina or Lee Harvey Oswald and knew nothing more concerning what he had related to us. So that is the FBI's investigation into Ruth Paine's mother and father and family. What do you think about that, Joe? Some kissing cousins.
It's very interesting. I didn't know about a lot about that. In terms of
our family.
I didn't know the father had visited Dallas, right? So Labor Day weekend. So, or was the letter Labor Day weekend?
I don't think, because Marina didn't go stay with Ruth until the end of September. So at that time, Marina wasn't living with Ruth. So he did not meet Marina or her daughters or Lee Oswald at the time.
I see. Yeah.
Yes.
We have a message from GP Ideal. There is a letter from Ruth to Marina where
that's the CIA itself.
Where Miss Paine offers Marina a weekly allowance to live with her. I am not.
I'll give you $10 a week and a tongue lashing.
Yeah.
If you stay with me.
If you have that letter, the Lone Gunman Podcast at gmail.com, send it, please. We'll definitely read it. But interesting, I didn't know about that.
Yes. And let's see. This is from an article from 1996 Pro magazine. And in here it states, in her New Orleans grand jury testimony, Ruth admitted that her brother-in-law, John Hoke, was employed by the Communications Resource Division of AID. And subsequent to the assassination, so was her father. There is plentiful evidence that the Agency for International Development was used, that's AID, Agency for International Development, was used as a CIA front and conduit to finance covert operations.
Yep.
Former Ohio Governor John Gilligan, no relation to the island, who headed AID during the Carter years, said at one time that AID field offices were infiltrated from top to bottom with CIA people. The idea was to plant operatives in every kind of activity we had overseas, government, volunteer, religious, every kind, end quote. Ruth's sister, Sylvia Hyde Hoke, worked for, quote, a government agency, but which one, Ruth just could not recall. FBI background reports on Ruth's family indicate her sister worked for the Air Force, but there is another document which claims she was a CIA employee. Could it be that William Avery Hyde, Ruth's father, the businessman, had them recruited early in his career by the CIA? Recall, William Avery Hyde was in the OSS. So let me back up a second here and get this straight. So we have William Avery Hyde, Ruth and Sylvia's father, was in the OSS. Check your list, Tiny. We need check your list.
We need the ages.
Yeah. And that while doing insurance business abroad, he also did intelligence work, which, shocker, makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh,
And Rob, so an actuary is kind of like a financial person for insurance companies that does a lot of statistical type of work. And I remember you mentioned that Sylvia Hoke had done the same type of whatever statistics in one of those agencies in what you first read. So that actually makes a lot of sense. So continue.
So the speculation is, did he eventually use his influence to get his daughter Sylvia and son-in-law employment in the intelligence community? Because if you remember, Sylvia's husband was also employed by the CIA.
They like to keep it in the family. We know that.
Yeah.
And
If so, was this an intelligence family with Ruth acting as an informal asset?
1 degree of separation, right?
It's all very interesting with these connections that can be made. And also you have, I believe, wasn't Alan Dulles connected to the Paine family as well? Or Michael?
It was Bancroft. What was her name?
Yeah, but they vacationed
Mary Bancroft
at the same place or somewhere that the Paines or the Hydes or somebody.
I believe it was Cape Cod. It was an island off of Cape Cod, I believe. Yes. And I actually have that document on the Paine family from Alan Dulles. I believe it was December 2nd, where they have extraordinary detail into the Paine family. And that is believed to be from Mary Bancroft, who knew Ruth and Lehman Paine.
Yeah. Lyman.
Lehman.
And this from the article, Michael and Lee, Peas in a Pod. So during the month of March in 1963, Michael Paine and Lee Harvey Oswald would each make changes in their residences. On March the 3rd, the Oswald family moved from their Elsbeth apartment to the nearby Neely Street apartment. On March 27th, Michael Paine moved from his Silver Bells apartment to the nearby Villa Fontaine apartments on Dalworth Avenue in Grand Prairie, Texas. Both men had first separated from their wives in September of 62, although the Oswalds would soon thereafter reconcile. The Paines would not reconcile until the day after Kennedy's murder. In the interim, Oswald allegedly ordered his 2 weapons from 2 separate mail-order houses. Marina would testify at the end of March 63 that she took 1, maybe 2, of the famous and controversial backyard photographs depicting Oswald in black, holding both his weapons and current issues of the Socialist and the Worker, or the Socialist Communist newspapers, The Militant and The Worker. The Oswalds may as well have been separated, considering how little time Lee actually spent at home. Oswald was supposed to be taking a nighttime typing class that spring semester at the local Voktech school beginning in January of 63, but he was dropped from this course on April 8th after too many absences. Marina had no idea where he was spending his evenings during these months. In fact, while still at the Elsbeth apartment, she would express her concern as to his whereabouts to her landlady, and during calls to various friends in the white Russian community in an effort to track him down. Michael Paine spent his time at Unitarian singles dances and madrigal events in the company of Everett Glover and Glover's roommates. These were white Russians. Ice skating was also a favorite pastime in this particular crowd, according to Everett Glover, who happened to be a skating partner of the Des Moines Shields. Michael Paine likewise enjoyed skating, according to Ruth. In a most curious entry in one of Oswald's notebooks is listed a pair of skates among various household items which were sold off. This list is in English, and the amounts listed are in keeping with dollars. Thus, it was fair to assume that this list was made while in the United States. Is it possible that Oswald went skating with the Paine crowd when he was supposed to be attending his typing classes? Michael Paine's extracurricular activities in the spring of '63 were not limited to just social fun. As was described in an earlier article in Probe, Paine liked to engage students at Southern Methodist University in political debate about communism in general and Cuba in particular. He promoted pro-Castro views.
Mm-hmm. And I was reading, he said in one of his Warren Commission testimonies that he did not talk to Oswald at all about Cuba.
Yeah, bullshit.
And really quickly, Rob, I don't want to interrupt you. Tiny Dancer. There are 7 Hydes in the OSS personal files. Tell me the first name again, and I'll William Avery. Was it?
There's 7 Hydes, and they're all related.
Yeah, William Avery, I think was.
Yeah,
I think it's Avery.
Check Clyde Hyde out too while you're at it, and Carl Hyde.
Yeah.
All right. Just tell us who the 7 Hydes are. We'll take it from there.
Deep State Tiny.
He even bragged of being personally acquainted with a real live communist, an ex-Marine who had recently returned to the States with a Russian wife, an obvious reference to Lee Harvey Oswald. Paine also invited students to attend local communist cell meetings. According to Robert Oswald, who was suspicious of Paine from the moment he met him, Paine was also rumored to be involved in the Fair Play for Cuba committee, just like Lee. Moreover, Paine liked to attend both right-wing and left-wing political meetings. Thus, no matter how Michael Paine endeavored to distance himself from Oswald during the Warren Commission investigation, which we've read here, the fact remains that Michael and Lee were actually 2 peas in a pod.
It doesn't surprise me. It seems like they would have a lot of political, ideological conversations. And it does make you think, though, someone like Michael Paine, who has a lot of money, right, is kind of an elite, right, kind of mucking around with Oswald here. Same thing with George de Mohrenschildt, right, former baron in Russia, dealing with Lee Harvey Oswald, keeping an eye on him. And it's hard to, and David Ferry as well, another very educated older person, right? Michael Paine, Ferry, de Mohrenschildt, all older people that I think could have had an ideological influence on Oswald in whatever way. I think it's very consistent, all those 3.
And Trey, that is not James Dean, bud. That is John F. Kennedy. So yes, time for new glasses, sir. It is John F. Kennedy.
Oh no. Sally has to say goodnight. So we'll say
Toodles,
goodnight.
Sally.
Her cats are being massive bell ends.
I know how that goes.
Yeah. Still got you on the TV. Night, Sally. Hope you can fall asleep to the nice
dulcet tones and big
sounds
bad
of our voice, right?
1990s. Michael Paine saw the backyard photos in April of 1963. So he says, Michael Paine, now 3 decades later, is now admitting that he first saw Oswald's backyard revolutionary photos prior to the Kennedy assassination. In a CBS report entitled Who Killed JFK? The Final Chapter, which aired in November of 93, Michael Paine told Dan Rather that Oswald proudly showed him a photograph holding his rifle and some papers when he went to pick him up one afternoon, presumably for the April 2nd dinner engagement. If true, this may account for Paine's lunchtime discombobulation upon hearing the news of the Kennedy shooting. But if Paine knew Oswald to be a violent-prone revolutionary as far back as April, how does Paine explain his subsequent relationship with Oswald in the fall of 1963? Excuse me. How could he let this person stay at his wife's house with his own children? Knowing that Oswald kept a rifle and a blanket is just as obvious a feature in the backyard photos as the narrow clapboard. How could he fail to recognize the metal object wrapped in a blanket in his garage as a rifle which he handled several times?
Yeah.
After all, he was the one who unloaded this bulky package when Ruth moved Marina and the Oswalds' meager possessions back to Dallas from New Orleans in September. Why did he withhold this vital information from the FBI and the Warren Commission in 63 and 64? The Paines are becoming more suspicious by the minute, and the oddities in their behavior and statements do not stop here. I very much agree with that assessment of things for Shizzy.
And that brings me back to whatever his name is. What is it? Krasinski, Krasinnik, who said when he found out about the Tippit killing and that Oswald was arrested, he's not supposed to have a gun.
Yeah.
That's what Krasinnik told the Warren Commission that Michael Paine said. So it makes you wonder if they found the gun and told him not to at some point and told him not to have it. Although why would you kind of say that? I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head here, but interesting.
Which brings us to 1966, Joe.
Okay.
Apparently in 66, during the Garrison inquiry in the Clay Shaw trial, the Paines and the Des Moines Shields had dinner together. Okay. And they had a discussion over the new backyard snapshot that was mentioned for the first time by Ruth in her 1967 grand jury testimony in Jim Garrison's prosecution of Clay Shaw. The discovery of this new photograph should have reinforced Ruth's views that Oswald was indeed the lone nut assassin who deserved to die at the hands of Jack Ruby. But be aware that this pious Quaker told author Jessamine West in the summer of 64 that she was glad that Oswald was dead and glad that he was killed by Ruby. Ruth justified her rather shocking and unchristian comments on the grounds that Oswald's death spared Marina the trauma of a trial. We are reminded of Jack Ruby's phony excuse that he killed Oswald to spare Jackie Kennedy the trauma of a trial. Is the same screenwriter at work here? Ruth's opinion of Oswald's guilt, however, does not become more entrenched with the Des Moines Shield photo. You know, the Hunter of Fascist photo. Instead, Ruth would write a positively gushy letter to Garrison offering to help out with his investigation and his courageous quest for the truth. Needless to say, the offer was ignored by Garrison, who had already formed his own opinion that the Paines were suspicious characters. Yeah, agreed. So, you know, everybody has their suspicions about the Paines and what they were doing with the Oswalds, you know, Michael and Ruth. You know, and I think the best illustration of Ruth Paine is in that movie, Joe, The Assassination of Mrs. Paine, where it seems like her story is this rehearsed word for word, insert tears here, insert emotions here, insert gasp here, pause here, retelling of her narrative since day one to now. It just seems all a bit too rehearsed for me to buy her story in any way. You've got to see the movie. go over on Amazon Prime. You can get it for a couple bucks. It's called The Assassination of Mrs. Paine. Michael Paine is in the movie briefly, as he's old and senile and in
Doesn't he
a
get yelled at for
home.
saying something he shouldn't have, and like Ruth corrects him or something?
Well, I don't know that it was Ruth, but he may have had a Gumar at the old folks' home.
That's an
I don't
interesting marriage. Hey, you never know.
You never know.
There's always, no matter where you are in life, there's always time for a Gumar. I think we'd all agree.
Amen.
But let me just say one thing. Perpetual Concepts, why talk Cuba in political discussions after the Cuban Missile Crisis? Yeah, it seems really out of the realm of possibility that Michael and Lee did not talk about Cuba. That's a stretch for me.
Yeah, total stretch. But I think we'll wrap it up there, folks. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark again.
As always.
As always. But hey, time flies when you're having fun. And Joe, is there anything you want to leave the people with?
I just want to thank John, Lee, Jack, Perpetual Concepts, Paula, and Scott Edwards for your super chats and stickers. We appreciate it as always. And of course, everyone that has joined us, you know who you are. We love you. We appreciate you guys hanging every week. And we had over 50 viewers, Rob, tonight. So
yes,
people are raging with us on Friday. So we love it.
Top 50 cherry.
That's it for me, guys.
All right, folks, you know the drill. If you like the show, smash the like button, share it. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. We do actually have a very good watcher to subscriber ratio, so that's good. I've seen channels on here where it's like 99% of the people watching your videos aren't subscribed to you, which is insane to me. But we actually have a very good ratio for that, but we could always use more. We're creeping up on 2,000. Hopefully we'll get there before the end of the year. That would be awesome. That's a goal that we are working towards. So yeah, once again, thank you folks for tuning in and hanging out with us. We had a blast as always. We appreciate all of the interaction and support we get from our comment crew. And yeah, y'all need a nickname better than the comment crew, but we will we'll work on that. We will take suggestions for the folks in our comment section during the show, because there's a whole other show going on in the comment section while we're doing the show, and it's awesome. I think it's great that all you guys get along and interact with each other and have fun. And yeah, that's it for us this week, folks. Until next week, America, England, Canada, Australia, Russia, France, Italy, Mexico, Japan, China. We love you all. Thank you for tuning in. And that's it for us. Until next time, folks. Peace. Peace. Peace, 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 peace.
Have a great weekend, gentlemen.
That's right. That's right.
In the heart of Dallas.